Okay, we're sitting here with Congressman Dusty Johnson and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to stop in here and give us a few minutes. Uh, I think maybe what we should touch on first is what does bring you to Watertown and bringing you through our little windy area here today.
Yeah, of course, most weeks I'm in Washington, D.C. Now I'm home every weekend, but most work weeks are in D.C. But every once in a while, we do get a work week where, uh, we're supposed to be out talking to people. I mean, making sure that we're really understanding what's going on in South Dakota. And today's just a pretty standard, busy in South Dakota day. Went to DeSmet, talked education with some educators, some administrators, also talked to the middle and high schoolers there. Went to Bryant, had a meeting with some key community leaders, kind of talking about the future of that area. Went to Lake Norden, toured their relatively new fire, ambulance, law enforcement center, and I kind of understood how some of the funding for that worked, and also just what's going on in Lake Norden, and now in Watertown, and again meeting with some key community leaders and answering questions and learning a fair amount. But it's busy, but it's a pretty typical day on the road.
Yeah. Well, when you say that you've learned a lot, I think one thing we could have talked about a little is the farm bill. I think we have talked about in the past too. So since you're in this community, what are you hearing maybe from the ag out there? And you say you're learning a lot. What are they saying to
Sure.
you?
Well, of course, they're very appreciative that we passed the farm bill out of the House on Friday. And I was one of the 6 subcommittee chairmen that drafted the farm bill. And we did, I mean, this was a skinny farm bill. We tackled about 85% of the farm bill already last year during the one big, beautiful bill. So, if you travel around South Dakota like I have and ask people, what do you want to make sure to see you're seeing the farm bill? They're going to mention crop insurance. We took care of that last year. Title I programs, raise those reference prices because we're in a very different input environment than we would have been 7 years ago. We fixed that reconciliation. Conservation programs, particularly working lands conservation, we dealt with that. And then food stamps, we dealt with that during reconciliation. So what's left behind are some smaller issues. They're still important, but mostly related to rural development or tweaking a few things. And we got the farm bill off the House floor last week. We passed it out of the House on a strong bipartisan vote, and now we just look forward to the Senate doing their part.
Mm-hmm. That kind of makes me think of for instance, like data centers. When you bring up ag and some of the land and things like that, that has been in our area, but federally. Do you ever see like the federal government assisting companies like that with any land procurement? It's generally local control on that kind of situation, right? You don't ever see them stepping in and helping with data centers for cybersecurity or anything like that.
No, I guess I haven't heard anybody argue that the federal government needs to be buying land. There are states who really understand the benefits. So North Dakota's probably been as aggressive as any state the last 3 years in recruiting data centers. They've seen their electric rates go down more than any other state in the country in the last 3 years as a result. I mean, if you do the right projects with the right protections, it is a huge benefit. The data center that was going to go into Deuel County, well, now they're going to leave. Our state legislature and our governor didn't strike the right balance during session. So now that Deuel County project's going to leave. It would have paid $5 million a year in property taxes to little Deuel County. All of the property taxes paid today to Deuel County are only $11 million. So it would have reduced the property taxes for people around the Clear Lake area more than anything else we could ever imagine. Would have been a total game changer. Well, our state lost that opportunity. That project's going to move just across the border. Of course, they'll be on the same electric grid. That's all interconnected. But all the tax dollars will now go to, Minnesota, or North Dakota, as opposed to, coming to South Dakota. Mm-hmm. So there's a right way to do these projects. South Dakota is, we've got a governor and a state legislature that I think is saying kind of no to all of it. I mean, my approach would be, let's say no to the projects that aren't a good fit. Let's say yes to the projects that are a good fit, because we have seen in places like North Dakota how they can reduce property taxes and reduce electric rates.
Mm-hmm. I think, too, what I was getting at was with cybersecurity being in federal government, do you see that being a focus of what there any concern is with AI?
Oh yeah, President Trump talks over and over and over again about how we cannot afford to lose this AI battle to China. And if we don't get our act together, we are going to lose the AI battle to China. The internet was really designed. I mean, America and our allies, we won the fight for the internet. As a result, a lot of the foundational parts of the internet really reflect American values of openness and transparency. If we let the Chinese Communist Party win the battle for AI, that is going to make for a much darker future. The people would just say, well, just let China build them. We don't need them in this country. That is kind of breathtaking in that I just can't imagine we would want to send all of this critically important data to China for processing, and then get back whatever the Chinese want us to have. That is not a wise approach.
Thank you. That's what I was kind of getting in, zeroed in on there. So you're in Watertown. Are there specific projects or any community issues or anything that you are looking into specifically around here?
Well, the conversation that keeps coming up every single day, whether I'm in Watertown or Mitchell or Aberdeen or elsewhere, is really affordability. I mean, we have an affordability crisis in the state. People don't really understand yet that it's going to get worse. I mean, the governor signed into law, and Speaker of the House, John Hanson, worked hard to increase these taxes as well. But our sales tax is going to go up 3 different times in parts. They signed 3 different sales tax bills. And so you're going to have a 0.3 increase at the state level. You're going to have a 0.5 increase at the county level potential. You're going to have, if the county opts into it, at the city level, you might have a 1.0. You add those together, those are the biggest sales tax increases than we have seen from the last 7 or 8 governors combined. And I guarantee, we know that things are going to get more expensive because of what the governor and the speaker did. And that, I think people are getting increasingly concerned about that.
Do you foresee any programs or anything that can help you hear the discussion of with all of the multiplexes and apartments? A lot of the burden is kind of for these property taxes is on like the commercial property owners or your ag owners and so on. But if there's more and more renters, they don't have as much of the burden.
Yeah. So of all of these, I mean, and that's really what Larry Roden and John Hanson have tried to say, that, well, yes, of course, we did increase your sales tax a whole bunch, but it's going to property taxes. If only that was true. About 40% of the potential increase is going to property taxes. Most of it, though, is not. Most of it is going to allow local governments to fund special projects. And but you're right that the net effect of all of that is going to be that people are going to pay a lot more in new sales taxes than what they are getting relief on for property taxes. And so everybody, listen, it's going to be bad news for the state as a whole, but it's also going to be bad news, especially for anybody who rents or anybody who is in a relatively modest home, or maybe their property taxes are not as big as people who live in really expensive homes, because most of the benefit goes to people who live in nice homes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. So when you're working in these rural areas, you talked about Lake Norden and the new emergency building facility they got built after their fire. Have you been running into questions about the rural healthcare and emergency services and that out there?
Yeah, so I worked hard to try to get the One Big Beautiful Bill to pass, and made sure that it included the Rural Health Transformation Fund. We know that rural health care is really important. And listen, I did a shift in the Rapid City Emergency Department. Boy, what an eye opener that was. I mean, I saw a guy code out, I saw a guy die. And these really dedicated professionals worked so hard to bring him back to life. And they did. And but it's the right people, the right training, the right equipment. We cannot afford to go backwards on rural healthcare. It was really frustrating to see the way that the governor filled out the application for that money caused the Trump administration to dock us $12 million. I guess it was closer to $15 million. So it's so hard to have John Thune, Mike Rounds, Dusty Johnson, Donald Trump work to build this great football, hand it off to state government, and then see them fumble the ball. I mean, that $15 million could do so much to help our rural hospitals, whether that's Watertown or DeSmet or Brookings. And that was very unfortunate.
Hmm. Well, I think over 60 some percent of the state's budget is federally funded. So does that, do you think there's ways to kind of chip away at that and be more self-sufficient?
Oh, I really reject this. I mean, I know people will say that like we're some sort of a welfare state. I mean, 80% of the traffic on the South Dakota interstates neither originates nor terminates in this state. I mean, we don't have I-90 and I-29 for South Dakota. We have it for the United States of America. And so, I mean, that's how, New Yorkers and folks from Boston, if they're going to drive to Seattle and Portland, that's how they get there. And so I don't view that as something that we should try to wean South Dakota off of. I mean, the same thing would be true when, we've got dollars coming to South Dakota for veterans benefits. That is not some sort of a redistribution of wealth to South Dakota. Those are benefits that people earned in the defense of this country. I mean, their service didn't help South Dakota. Their service helped the United States of America. And so, and similarly, when we've got dollars that flow in to make good on our treaty responsibilities to Indian reservations, those are deals. The state of South Dakota didn't cut those deals. Those deals were cut by the United States government. And so I just don't really see a lot of programs that have been created to help South Dakota out as much as I see programs that were created to make good on the priorities of our nation.
Hmm. Good. So what do you see as maybe some of the top oversight priorities for the remainder of the session?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we need to get the annual defense bill done. That's hugely important. We've worked hard to make sure that the B-29 bomber B-21 bomber is going to be able to come to South Dakota on time. And we feel really good about that. That'll show up at some point in the next 12 months. The very first, I mean, we're going to be the first home of these great new generation bombers. That's important. I do think healthcare affordability is a major problem. And particularly on the pharmaceutical side, I push back against big pharma kind of a lot. Big pharma doesn't like me and I don't like them. And I don't know why they're giving other countries such a good deal and making Americans pay more than our fair share. I am a big proponent of the bill that would ban members of Congress from buying or selling individual stocks. And I think we're going to get a vote on my bill here in the next month or two. And then I'm also a big fan of making sure that the Chinese Communist Party is not allowed to buy American farmland or any agricultural processing facilities in this country. And we're getting closer and closer to getting that done.
You are still fighting that deal. I know we've talked about that in the past. It seems like for a while, trying to negate that. So it's just
And we made some progress. We made it harder. We've required the committee that has to approve large foreign investments in this country does a better job of saying no to some of these agricultural processing or some of the agricultural transactions. We made it harder for countries to buy land near critically important American military bases or other federal installations. But we need to go further, and that's really what I'm pushing for.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Especially coming from a rural area, I suppose you can see a lot of unique opportunities when you're in South Dakota. Well, I always want to make sure that we leave a couple minutes for you because I know you've got a schedule. But is there anything that you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Well, one thing we didn't talk about that is really a crisis in South Dakota is just our criminal justice system, particularly on parole. We've got so many sheriffs and police chiefs and state's attorneys and mayors that are saying the state-run parole system is a disaster. It was a week or two ago in Rapid City on a single night, there were 7 people under state supervision, parolees, who were picked up for committing more crimes. It's an absolute crisis. We're one of the worst states in the country on that. We have the 3rd worst recidivism rate in America. 50% of the people that the state government lets out of prison go on to commit another crime within 3 years. That is them breaking into another car. That is them selling meth to another kid. And I just don't, people are getting increasingly frustrated that we just have a state government. We have a governor who just has not done anything until just recently to try to address the problem. And we are giving repeat offenders too many bites at the apple. We're not holding them accountable. Last week, the governor rolled out some reforms, but I think most police chiefs and sheriffs I'm talking to are pretty disgusted with it.
Mhm.
They just feel like 30 days from an election is not the time to finally acknowledge that we have one of the very worst recidivism rates in the whole country. And we do need to tackle that. And that's one of the reasons I worked with those same law enforcement officers to develop the Safer South Dakota initiative, because we absolutely can do better. And honestly, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we had a better system. It's just relatively recently that the wheels have come off this truck.
Do you think some of that mental health, also prevention, plays a part in that whole scheme of kind of trying to get that problem depleted?
Yeah, I mean, of course, every state in America is struggling with mental health. All but two of them are doing a better job than we are of rehabilitation. And it's a little unfortunate because, the governor sold us this new $650 prison, which I was supportive of. This was something we needed to get done as a state. But part of the promise was that we would do a dramatically better job of programming inside the walls of prison, so people weren't coming out and committing as much crime. We have done nothing, and I mean nothing, to develop better substance abuse and addiction treatment inside the walls, better rehabilitation, better vocational training inside the walls. This last legislative session, the one bill that would have done a better job of programming inside the walls of the prison was killed. And so yes, every state is struggling with mental health. Almost all of them are doing a better job dealing with it than we are.
Wow. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of issues that, and not only that, but they're on so many different spectrums of the government. You've got, the jail that you're dealing with, and then you have land and all sorts of things. So
Oh yeah,
it's
and by the way, the next 20 years can be the very best years in America and in South Dakota's future. Like, we've got a lot of the pieces. We just need some energy and some vision to put them all together. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited to get started, because I do think South Dakota has a lot going for it if we can just develop a plan to move forward on some of these things.
very good. Anything else that you want to touch
No,
on?
thanks much.
Okay, well, thank you for coming in. We appreciate Congressman Dusty Johnson for his time, and you're watching Northeast Radio SD.